far left, and everywhere in between. So let's bring on Big Papa Fascist, aka Andrew Wilson. How are you tonight, Andrew?
Good.
All right. Yeah, so if you want to give a brief introduction, tell people a little bit about yourself, where you lie on the political spectrum, and maybe where people can find you.
I lie on the right wing. I have a YouTube channel I just launched, just a place to upload the video debates that I do. And you can find that Big Papa Fascist on YouTube. I debate specifically for Politically Provoked, and I debate only right-wing issues on their behalf. That's pretty much it. I'm here on behalf of the working class proletariat tonight to get it on with this communist. So.
Okay, all right. So the next person we have joining us is a well-known streamer in the world of Twitch and YouTube, and one of the most popular online leftists known for his debates. He has some of the most devoted and loyal fans I've ever encountered, many of whom I've seen crediting him to their own de-radicalization. So he goes by the name of Vaush. So let's bring him on. How are you tonight, Vaush?
Howdy. Comfy in the tank top, nice, cozy, 73 degrees in here. I also get called Big Papa by some people, so already I feel a kinship stronger than I could ever feel along racial lines. Truly, two brothers united. Really excited to see how this plays out.
It should be fun, yeah. So if you want to give a brief introduction, tell people a little bit about yourself, where you lie in the political spectrum, and where people can find you.
Yeah, I'm a socialist. You can find me pretty much anywhere if you type Vaush into any respective social media search engine. And I too am here on the part of the proletarian, the working class, maybe to a different degree of sincerity. So we'll see how that pans out.
All right. So here is what we will do. Each person can give an opening statement, can be as little as 1 minute, no longer than 5, about this topic and what your stance is. After that, we'll open up the floor. After the debate is over, we'll hop into the Q&A portion. That's where we'll take questions from the audience. For those who do have questions, make sure to tag Politically Provoked and who your question is addressed to. I'll jot them down during the debate, and if they are available at the end, we can pull them up. I'm going to pull up the rules really quick so we're all on the same page. All right, so basically no racism, homophobia directed at guests or audience, no cutting people off, no cutting people off when they are speaking, no over-talking each other, no personal attacks, attacking people's personal appearance, limit the filibusters. We're here to have a discussion. Everyone should have equal time, and no attacking families or doxing of guests. So some of these rules don't apply to the audience, but some of them do. So I just want to make sure that people in the audience are following them as well. So any violation will result in a 30-second mute. Every additional violation will tack on another 30 seconds. Hopefully you won't need to do that. Let's attack the argument, not the person. And again, that goes for the audience as well. So with that being said, let's get started with opening statements. Andrew, this is your topic. Why don't you get us started?
So I've debated many libertarian socialists, many of whom are influenced somehow by this man Vaush. I admit I'm somewhat fascinated with the concept of libertarian socialism, as the very name is an oxymoron. Libertarians value, of course, the individual above the collective and secure that belief with strong individual property rights. Socialists, on the other hand, believe the collective to be far more important than the individual, and that property rights should only be meted out via collective need. In struggling to understand the concept of this philosophy, I actually just gave up. It doesn't make any sense. It isn't really designed to make sense. The philosophy is only there, I realize, because libertarian socialists don't want to be called communists. That's it, really. It's just another communist philosophy that's dressed up to confuse the uninitiated into thinking it's something other than communism. Communism 1.5, if you will. The outliers of society seem to be drawn to this philosophy. Several having told me things like they worry about the future generations of the chickens of the world, and we need to all be vegans because of the great chicken genocide that's currently going on, or that the rampant rates of AIDS and STDs in homosexual men are because of social stigma that prevents them from buying lube and condoms. I almost couldn't believe these arguments could come out of self-proclaimed rational people who use Enlightenment thinking as the source of their dogma. But then I got to listen to the architect of many of these thoughts, Vaush, the captain of cognitive dissonance himself. Vaush's stance on immigration, which is the subject of tonight's debate, makes no sense. This has been pointed out to him many times, but he seems to double down on it anyways, regardless of how bad his stance makes him look. Vaush wants mass immigration. He masks the reason he wants mass immigration under the guise of diversity, claiming anybody who's opposed to mass immigration is a racist, a Nazi, or a white supremacist. Why? Well, Vaush utilizes cherry-picked economic studies made by supply-side capitalist economists who claim that while mass immigration will indeed displace the wages of the most vulnerable in society, specifically blacks, and the existing immigrant population, that it's okay because in the end, it'll be a net boon for corporations and the federal government at the expense of the worker. This, of course, leaves a reasonable man such as myself dumbfounded as to why a self-proclaimed communist would take that stance. It should be the exact opposite, shouldn't it? That will protect the most vulnerable workers' wages and fight against their displacement by rich corporate and government interests. The stance only looks hypocritical on the surface, however, as there are two major things you need to think about with the stance Vaush takes here. One, tightly controlled borders are in no way diametrically opposed to communism. You can be the ultra-commie and still believe that we need tight border controls. Of course, that would make it more difficult to call opposition to your ideas Nazis, which is likely why Vaush takes this stance in the first place, rhetoric being key to communist sympathizers. Two, by advocating under the guise of diversity for an open border model and mass migration now, Vaush and his communist backers can bring in millions of unskilled laborers, overwhelming the jobs market. Understanding there's a natural boom and bust cycle in the economy, they can simply wait until we hit a bust and there'll be millions overnight in abject poverty. This will become their new proletariat from which they can convince to overthrow via violent means if necessary the current economic and social system of the United States. In many ways, I'm thankful to Vaush and channels like his because for years I've argued with progressives that socialism was just step one of a communist takeover of the institutions of the United States, that academia was radicalizing a new generation of communists in order to infiltrate our state institutions, which they have now done. I was told by progressives this was a conspiracy theory, yet here is one right here. And right now, gleefully expressing these very same sentiments to hundreds of thousands of viewers daily, completely vindicating the right-wing view that this has been happening since the 60s. Vaush's view on immigration tonight will make no sense. He'll advocate right-wing think tank beliefs that are pro-crony capitalist at the expense of the labor force he claims to want to protect. This is why his true motivations for mass immigration are obvious. Everything else he says is just a dog whistle for a proletariat revolution by any means necessary. This is why he wants mass immigration, and make no mistake about it.
All right. So thank you. So Vaush, you are up.
Nice. Okay, I see we have a lot to talk about. So there are a couple of points you made circling the drain before you addressed the key argument of immigration, and I'd like to hit those first. First of all, the term libertarianism was invented by socialists. The origin of the term is rooted in left-wing thought. Libertarianism, in its original form, is ultimately about freedom and autonomy, something Karl Marx was also very concerned with, and therefore lends itself to left-leaning ideas. The idea of libertarianism being capitalist is what is inherently contradictory, because to simultaneously reject power differentials and then vindicate capitalism, an economic system which requires them, is pretty silly. You claim that libertarian socialism is some sort of dog whistle to avoid being called a communist. I am a communist. I have never met a libertarian socialist who didn't also subscribe to some sort of communist set of thinking. There's some feedback noise coming from one microphone. Does anyone know where that's coming from? Okay, there you go. Just got caught. So that's well and settled. My opponent, Andrew, here listed off a couple of arguments that I'm not entirely sure he heard or remembered or understood fully, and then attributed them to me. Something about chicken genocide and the AIDS crisis. I can't really speak to or debunk half-formed arguments. I'm not really sure what to say about that. But with regards to immigration, the case is extraordinarily simple. So we can speak purely in economics, and then I'll spread out to more of a social and cultural analysis. Economically, immigration is good for a country. It's really, really simple. It just is. As long as you have a market economy, labor is a resource, and the addition of more people to your country who can work bolsters the labor market and therefore makes your economy stronger. Data has shown this to be the case. Now, this isn't some ideologically slanted neoliberal supply side data. This is just a factual analysis of the extent to which an increase in the supply of labor benefits an economy. This isn't just an America thing. It happened in the Soviet Union back in the 1960s and 70s too. This is every country. You just want more people working. That works. And what's more, even though we have a horribly inequitable economic system right now at this moment, it remains the fact that the vast majority of American workers benefit from immigrants. Time and time again, we've done these studies. Does an influx of immigration lead to lower wages? And the answer across the board, with one exception, is no. The only exception to that are people who fall within the income category of those who have not graduated high school. Now, the majority of American workers have graduated high school. There are some who haven't. But I argue this. If there are inequities to be found with regards to our immigration system and the way in which its proceeds are divided amongst this country, what's new? That's the case for everything in our economy. Every innovation, every industry, every tax policy, all of it contributes to an inequitable distribution of wealth, not just immigration. So the solution to that problem is the same as it is for all other like problems, to ensure that we have policies which allow for the redistribution of wealth from the wealthy to those who need it more. This is not different or unique with immigration. The reason why you take issue with immigration isn't because it uniquely affects the working class. You probably, I'm just guessing here from Big Papa Fascist, the name, you probably don't care much about brown people or brown people coming in. So that's why you target it specifically. Otherwise, if your issue is, hey, this economic policy disproportionately benefits the wealthy, you'd be targeting every economic policy. So why the obsession with immigration? To create a narrative of fear. That's exactly what you did right there. This conspiracy of since the 1960s of communists bringing immigrants in to form the basis of a proletarian revolution. You inspire fear in the people who listen to you. And that's why this scares you so much. It's because it's an easy narrative that allows you to galvanize your beliefs. In reality, immigration really isn't scary. It's a natural component of any and all civic policies that exist. It benefits our country. This isn't even to speak of the social or cultural benefits, considering how much immigrants have done for America culturally. I grew up in LA, I benefited from that quite a bit. So, it seems like a slam dunk. Economically, socially, culturally, immigration benefits Americans. It does. And in the scant instances where there is inequitable distribution to the point that it hurts people, we can fix that in other ways. In much more effective ways without damaging the rest of the economy.
So, first to the name, the reason I call myself Big Papa Fascist is because that's what I'm labeled by progressives as being a fascist. Has nothing to do with my actual political beliefs. That's one. Two, as we're discussing immigration, I'm not taking issue that immigrants are a boon to the economy, depending on the sector that you're bringing them in for. I'm talking about unfettered immigration into the United States, especially with weak border policies, which you seem to advocate. One of the big things that I want to go over is the impact of illegal immigration on the wages and employment of Black people. We can clearly see from the briefing before the United States Commission on Civil Rights, this was in 2008, and you have current 2020 data. This from the economic impact of illegal immigration in the United States. This is from the Butchell College of Arts and Sciences. And you will be able to note that among its findings, the commission notes that illegal workers are estimated to account for as much as 1/3 of total immigrants in the United States. And that illegal immigration has tended to increase the supply of low-skilled, low-wage labor. The commission found also that 6 in 10 adult Black males have a high school diploma or less. One of your counter arguments is that it's going to be people without a high school diploma who are the most displaced economically by immigration. That would be Blacks, would it not?
Are you under the impression that I would turn against a sound economic policy because Black people in America tend to be poorer than white people?
Well, no. What I'm talking about is displacement, economic displacement for the poorest among us. And it seems that immigration,
you can fix that with policy, no?
Mass migration, especially illegal immigration, seems to affect them the most. So why don't we instead?
I'm not pro illegal immigration.
So why don't we instead have a tough, staunch border policy and only bring in immigrants for the sectors, the labor markets that we need them in?
We need them in
And
all
why
of
is
them.
citizenship a requirement of doing that, by the way?
Sure. So first of all, it's not a matter of citizenship. It's a matter of whether or not you're a legal or illegal immigrant. Of course, illegal immigrants aren't going to contribute as much to the economy, and they're going to compete with low-income earners. They're illegal immigrants. They have to reside on the margins of society, which is why we shouldn't have illegal immigrants. We should have legal immigrants. We should allow all these people to stay within our country without them having to worry about ICE or Border Patrol. And additionally, the problems that Black people are facing did not begin and end with immigration. We can fix them with redistributive policies and with investment into the neighborhoods that they live in. That's not going to change with or without immigration. Trust me, Black people have been getting shafted in the labor market since well before we got.
Why do you want to add to that exactly?
Because it benefits the overall economy, which leads to lower commodity costs, which leads to, generally speaking, higher employment, and it leads more money to the federal government that we can use for redistributive policies that would help Black people in a more broad way. See, if you bring immigrants, I'll put it this way: we'll gamify it. Say you allow illegal immigrants in, okay, like a lot of them, and Black people take -5 points. They take 5 points of econ damage. All right, but because of the additional tax revenue that you get and other economic benefits from those illegal immigrants, the government now has 10 econ points that they have the ability to spend on Black people's issues. In reality, it's not just Black people who benefit from this. Everybody does. We're giving ourselves more money. The government's not talking
about mass redistribution policies to Black America, sir.
I love mass redistribution.
Okay, but the current government's not talking about that. And right now we have the immigration policy right this second that allows unfettered illegal immigration into this country, which is displacing the Black worker, not just displacing them economically, but it's also a displacement for where they live. They put the poorest immigrants in Black sections of society.
There are two options here. We could get rid of immigration, as you advocate for, harm our economy, harm our general reproductive rate and domestic growth.
I didn't advocate to get rid of immigration, sir.
You could substantially reduce it, which would harm the economy, lead to increased commodity prices for people regardless of their income. This would be an incredibly difficult policy to pull off. We would have to spend hundreds of billions at the border to maintain that kind of cohesive network. It would be expensive, draining, and for what? So we have fewer poor people in our neighborhoods? Or we could continue immigration, allow our country to grow stronger, grow bigger, more money to play around with, and then we invest a fraction of that money in fixing some of the institutional issues, which is, by the way, something we're going to have to do anyway. We can't move forward as a country until we deal with this reparations issue.
But one more time,
immigration gives us the money to deal with it.
But one more time, nobody right now is looking at redistributive policies for that. And if you're talking about the megala rich getting megala richer from immigration, you're not talking about the common worker getting rich
take their
from
money.
immigration.
No, the common worker does. It's only the lowest sector of income earners.
No, it's not. And
do you want to study?
There are many studies on this from Heritage, from the Center of Immigration Studies. The most comprehensive immigration studies that have been done have been from these think tanks on illegal immigration. Not only does illegal immigration cost us billions, let me finish and then I'll let you, sir. Not only does illegal immigration cost us billions and billions of dollars from the most comprehensive studies that we can find, but also it displaces the common worker in a big way. So what I'm advocating for is, if you're going to have an immigration policy, why don't you do a sectored immigration policy where you bring in immigrants based on the sector that we need them in?
We need them in every sector.
We don't need them in, well, we need immigration in every sector to a degree, but some you need more immigration than in others. Illegal immigration, you're talking about massively importing mostly unskilled workers.
Illegal immigration. They should all be given the ability to come here legally. Second of all,
they're given the ability
generally most negative on illegal immigration. The Borjas studies indicate that while illegal immigrants may constitute a fiscal drain to the United States government, they actually represent an economic benefit, because even though they're not paying as much in taxes, and even though they tend to drain services a little bit more proportionally, they still contribute economically due to their addition to the labor force. So even the most negative researchers with regards to illegal immigration find that it's more or less a wash. Now, keep in mind, if we want to get rid of that neutral, that wash, that no benefit, no loss situation, we'd have to spend billions at the border. Or we could just let them come in as legal immigrants. We get all the positives. We don't get the negatives. They come on and they work. They give us money. We give them money. It's a great system.
But they cost us billions now in remittances, and they cost our healthcare system and our system in general billions of dollars now.
And yet immigrants still contribute to our economy.
And nobody's saying that immigration doesn't contribute to the economy. What I'm saying is that if you're looking at illegal immigration, that is pumping in massive quantities of unskilled labor. And the unskilled labor market only needs so many. That's why you end up with this issue where Black America is massively displaced, because they're essentially at that point, the labor market is massively increased for unskilled workers.
And yet
it's not a good idea.
And yet our unemployment was lower than it ever has been just 2 years ago.
That was thanks to an anti-immigrant president.
No, we still had tens of millions of immigrants in this country. There was a slight decrease in the amount of immigration that we were seeing from the border since the Bush years. But the idea that our record low unemployment was a product of fewer immigrants coming in is unfounded. And I've not seen any data to indicate that. In reality,
yes, it's common sense, actually, because
I don't make my arguments based on common sense.
Okay, well, no, you do in this case, because if you're talking about the labor market with unskilled workers, if there's less unskilled workers, clearly corporations are going to have to compete for labor. Thus, you're going to have more employment and more wages, man.
Except, I mean, the data really just doesn't indicate that point.
Of course it indicates that point.
No, wait, it absolutely doesn't. Immigration itself, not illegal immigration, but immigration in general, is just a net benefit. Illegal immigration is a wash. They may cost the government more, but the money they contribute to the economy means that non-illegal immigrants pay more in taxes. So that means that eventually it ends up washing back to the government in the end. At the end of the day, this is just, we're talking about a non-issue here. The issue here is caused by our policies that prevent these illegal immigrants from being enfranchised fully. We need to get everyone a path to citizenship. We need to make it easier to come into this country, because once we're talking strictly legal immigrants, we're talking a flat benefit for this country. I mean, just empirically, in every sense, with the exception of, again, a marginal fraction of our worker base. I'm talking maybe 5% of the American worker base or less, and we can fix that problem with redistributive policies that we wanted to implement anyway.
But why not increase taxes? You can have legal immigration now. Nobody's arguing against having legal immigration now. Yeah, but for some reason you keep conflating illegal immigration with legal immigration and saying that the solution to illegal immigration is just make them all legal, give them amnesty.
Then it becomes
this is also, by the way, the cause of the border surge that's going on right now with mass migration from the border, is because they know that the Biden policy is a countdown policy. He's looking at a 5-year countdown. So they're all trying to get in now so that they have time served so that they can get those green cards instead of waiting in line like everybody else has to.
Why would I worry about that? My life is only benefited. Most American workers are only benefited.
Most. No, it's not most. Here, wait, hold on. Not from illegal immigration.
Let me read out some bullet points for you super quick, okay? So this is from the National Bureau of Economic Research. The study contends that previous analyses on the relationship between immigration and wages falsely assumed perfect labor substitutability between immigrants and native workers. However, research has shown the average American wage rises due to immigration, both in the short and long term. The only native demographic, so native as in people who aren't immigrants, whose wages drop, are high school dropouts who suffer a decrease in wages of approximately, get this, 2% in the short term, which drops to a 1.1% over time.
When was that study done?
This study was done, hold on, let me pull, I was reading from notes. This study was done in 2006, well after the immigration flow to the southern border.
So I have much more modern studies that have the most comprehensive data on this to date, which would include the Heritage Foundation. This would include FAIR. This would include CIS. And nothing has really changed much. Interestingly enough, in the Center for Immigration Studies, on the cost of IRCA amnesty after 10 years, and this is from 1997, and we can compare the data directly with modern studies from Heritage.
If you have the studies, could you link them? I'd like to take a look at them.
I can't link them. I don't have access to the chat. So
gotcha.
I can tell you that you can find this. You can find these studies. This one's by Sandra Clark. the cost of amnesty to the American taxpayer.
Cost of amnesty.
And here's what you can find as far as a summary from 1997 from the Center on Immigration Studies. As far as job displacement, about 1.66 million legalized workers, 70% of them unskilled, displaced an average of 187,000 citizens and settled immigrant workers from jobs each year. Cost of public assistance to those displaced totaled $9.9 billion for the decade. That was 1997, and they had already had amnesty.
Hold on, I'm reading
let me finish, and then I'll give it back. They had already had amnesty, okay? And so they were able to study it comprehensively to see what the cost-gain analysis was. Now, your current studies from Heritage and your current studies from FAIR all support this exact same data from 1997 on the cost-gain analysis. Okay, when you're talking about amnesty.
So I can very safely say that the research you're pointing me to right now is nonsense. I can demonstrate it too really, really quickly.
Okay.
So this is, I don't even have to read. I would love to see the methodology of this study, but this is the most ludicrous assertion that I've seen in my life. So it says right here, if amnesty is enacted, the average adult unlawful immigrant would receive about $600,000 more in government benefits over his lifetime than he would pay in taxes. The lifetime fiscal deficit of amnesty, benefits minus taxes, would be $6.3 trillion, and that's a conservative estimate. So this is incorrect for reasons that I'm happy to explain. Okay. Even poor Americans, I mean poorly educated, not super economically productive Americans, are ultimately a net benefit to our country. This is in spite of the fact that for the first 18 years of an American's life, they do nothing but drain. Before a person is old enough to work and pay taxes, all they do is drain from their society because they take the cost of investment in healthcare and what have you. Whereas immigrants, when they come to this country, overwhelmingly so, especially illegal immigrants, we're talking about people for whom the investment of early upbringing was done in another country. The idea that providing amnesty to these people and allowing them to benefit from American federal benefits the way any other worker would lead to an overall drain, considering the fact that these are a very highly employed demographic, is ridiculous. There's no mathematical.
I'm sorry, but that's not a refutation to actual data, sir.
Wait, I need to see the methodology then, because this is a ludicrous conclusion. I mean, it's
a ludicrous conclusion because you can't refute it. Got it.
No, wait, hold on. Wait, first of all, it's impossible to refute without seeing the methodology, which I doubt you've seen, and I doubt you have a degree necessary to actually interpret it, which I do, by the way. And second of all, I just explained to you why the math for this doesn't work. Do you want me to explain it again?
Your explanation's not a refutation. So one more time. By the way, saying that you have a degree in sociology, when we have a big problem with sociological studies, sometimes up to the term of 60% not being able to be replicated in a replication crisis, does not make you qualified to refute the actual empirical data here.
Wait, what would you need to refute the data?
Actual data that refutes it.
What data? Because I'm looking at the analysis here. Where's the actual data? Have you seen their math?
What do you mean? Have I seen their math? This is what the data says.
Wait, hold on.
You want me to go through and calculate all their math?
It's okay. Yes or no?
A study from 2008. I can give you modern studies that correlate with the 97 studies, and you want me to give you.
First of all, 97 is before 2000.
I said the modern ones correlate with them.
So second of all, it's interesting that you would say I haven't refuted the data when you haven't seen the math yourself. You're just trusting the highlights from the report.
That's still not you refuting the data.
So a refutation is what you do when you explain why a thing doesn't work. That's the definition of a refutation.
Yeah, but you usually have a refutation with some type of data behind it.
It's impossible in a live debate format.
I take issue with the math here because I don't know what it is exactly.
Wait, hold on. Wait, first of all, you don't know what it is. And second of all, how you see? You're saying the only way that I could take issue with the conclusions of a study would be for me to counter-produce a study live. Like, I want you to explain it to me because I'm curious what your perspective is.
I think if we were on opposite ends and I had asked you for refutations, you would say that's weak. Well, I'm showing you what all the economists have to say.
You can imagine that I am
giving you study after study after study which correlate with 1997 data, and you're saying I can only refute this. I can only refute this. If I can do a detailed analysis on the mathematics, which is fine.
The link to their study is a 404. Wait, hold on. The link to their study is a 404. The only thing that's here are the highlights. The actual study is gone.
Which
I'm sorry,
study?
I can't accept this data.
Which
the Heritage Foundation
No,
report.
no, it's not. No, it's not. It can
Yeah,
be
wait, I just clicked it. Wait, yeah, it's 404.
No, it's not.
I'm live streaming. I'm not the only one who can see the 404 link.
Okay, well then look at a different website that doesn't give you a 404.
It's heritage.org. Where else should I look?
So the website's down? What do you want?
No, it links to a 404. The article doesn't exist anymore. It's not that the website's down. I can see the highlights. The report itself is gone.
So some of these studies, like the FAIR, it's not just Heritage. There's multiple sources
We're moving off with
each other. And the AP has cited FAIR on this, by the way. The Associated Press has cited FAIR.
Well, can you show me? Can you give me the info on the FAIR article? Because I'm already being provided a Cato Institute criticism of FAIR's paper.
Oh, you're using a right-wing corporate think tank to give you the refutations.
So first of all, you're the one who cited the Heritage Foundation, and second of all, I like to look at data and determine its veracity, regardless of the sources that it comes from.
Okay, well, if you have no refutations on this data, let's move on.
Wait. First of all, not only did I refute it, like
you didn't refute anything.
Logic, even you should be able to follow, but the study doesn't even exist anymore. If you want, I can run through the refutation one more time. I want your opinion on it. Okay, so wait, one more time. Okay, so let's say we take an American. This American drops out of high school. They aren't very economically productive their entire life. This person, in spite of the fact that they'll take a lot of government benefits, still contributes generally in a positive way to our economy. So how is it that providing amnesty to an illegal immigrant who arrived in this country as an adult could lead to a net fiscal drain to our country? How does that math work? Because they work too. And we're assuming they work at the lowest level of education and experience.
Well, you're forgetting about a lot of things there. You're not talking about remittances. You're not talking about the drain on our healthcare system. No, you're not talking about any of these other things that play into that. Not only that,
so much.
But I'm not going to be
studies on remittances.
I'm not going to be bogged down on this the entire debate. I've already gone through the data that I can produce. I would like to move on to the child trafficking at the border.
Wait, hold on. We can't move past this because so far you have absolutely failed to prove your point. I want to see that other study.
And that's fine that's your opinion, but I think my point was well made, and I don't think that you have any empirical data to refute it at all, and haven't provided anything except I have a 404.
Do you want to respond to the study that I provided?
Even though I provided multiple sources for it, not just the Heritage. I'm just saying they're all in agreement with what they were saying back in 1997.
Do you want to take a look at my source?
Sure,
I'll provide
black
it right
wages.
See,
now that aside, right? I'm not going to be bogged down the entire debate. We only got so much time.
I'm not trying to bog you down. It just seems like you weren't actually willing to learn or engage with the subject. You just had a couple of studies you haven't even read yourself, and you just sort of threw them out there. But I've given you a study right there. I think that the math in it is very, very strong. I've gone over it myself.
And when was the study done?
It was first of all, you linked me a 1997 paper. Second of all,
I did, but
wait, first of all, 2006, which is when this paper is from, is after the influx of illegal immigration from our southern border. So that's taking into account the type of influences that you see today in our immigration system.
So also, does the 1997 study, which correlates with the 2020 data that I've provided.
What 2020 data?
The 2020 data from FAIR, the 2020 data from Heritage, the 2020 data from
provide me any info? Is it going to be another 404 link that doesn't show anything and provides?
No, it's not going to. I don't know.
This is what I mean. You don't know either. You have
404 link on yours.
Do you want to read mine? I read yours.
But one more time, those are where you can find those datas. I can't drop them into the link, unfortunately.
Well, you can give me the title. I can Google them. But I've given you some data right there. I linked it. See, it's in the little chat.
I can't do anything to link it your way, unfortunately. Nothing I can do about that. I can give you the sources and the dates and say if they correlate with the 97 data. And again, we can leave the point, and I would like to move on to the trafficking at the southern border, the human trafficking. If you wouldn't mind at least getting into that with me. The FAIR data.
I'm looking at a criticism of the FAIR data right now.
Yeah, and that's fine. Studies will always have criticisms on their methodology, but that is the most current data and the most current years that we have available to us from these various institutions that have studied this. Left-wing institutions tend not to study it. Only right-wing institutions tend to study it comprehensively.
Be the refutation of the study, not the study itself, since you generally can't criticize something until after the thing you're criticizing exists?
I'm sorry, what? Say that again.
I feel like we can move on from this point, but the overwhelming totality of data on this subject affirms my position that immigration is a net economic benefit, that illegal immigration would be less of a drain if we simply made it legal immigration,
Well,
which we have
sure,
the
but
power to do.
you haven't
And
made a case. You haven't made a case at all for why we can't just bring in immigrants for the sectors that need them. Why we need to have an open border at all?
Because immigration
you say it'll save us money, even though it won't save us money at all. The current data doesn't show that illegal immigration is a boon for us at all. It just shows that it's massive.
The most critical data on illegal immigration indicates that it's a net wash. So there are positive studies on the benefits of illegal immigration to our country. Those ones are more common. I choose to use the most critical studies because I like to make sure that my arguments are as neutral and leveled as possible. But even using conservative talking points from anti-illegal immigration studies, the data remains clear. It's just a net benefit. And if you want, you can bring in less immigration, but why? More is better. And it services our economy.
More can be better. More can be better if it's for sector specific jobs.
Yeah, just in general.
But illegal immigration is not good at all. And one of the reasons it's not good, besides just the economics, is the human trafficking and drugs that go across the border.
Okay, so we can move from the econ stuff to the trafficking now. Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about the human trafficking at the southern border and the massive problem that's going on there with child trafficking and human trafficking. And I'd like to know why you want to have the border more open, knowing that that's a massive issue that's going on there.
Wait, how do they human traffic at the border?
What do you mean?
Well, how do they do it?
They do it any number of different ways. There's not a specific way. Sometimes they just use cargo trucks. Sometimes they find weaknesses somewhere along the border to move people in and out. There's people who are specifically trained called coyotes who do this. If the border was open, though, I don't see how that would limit the human trafficking in and out of Mexico.
Wait, so you're saying that the existence of human trafficking in the border is largely contingent on the fact that there's illegal immigration?
No, it's largely contingent on the fact that there's lax border security because you want more immigrants who are illegal.
So let me, I'll make a case to you. We'll see if this seems valid to you. Okay. So sex trafficking and human trafficking are happening in pretty extensive volumes here in America and abroad. The main ways in which these things takes place is usually by taking advantage within cells within a country that allow for the trafficked victims to be seized, held, and essentially detained for a time until the next step in whatever horrible journey they're going through arrives. So essentially, the easiest way to ensure an increase in sex trafficking in America is to make sure we have as many illegal immigrants as possible. The more illegal immigrants we have in this country, the more cells of people there are who need to avoid the police, who need to form communities that are effectively underground, that deal in their own business with their own communities outside the purview and supervision of the law. Therefore, if we enfranchised all of the people who are currently in this country as illegal immigrants, they would be able to operate in the light. They would no longer have to operate outside the purview of the law. And more people would travel to America through official checkpoints and border security that they could otherwise benefit from. Nobody wants to take a coyote.
So you think that cartel land is going to go, oh, the border's open. We're going to stop all that human trafficking stuff now. Because you're saying that the cells that they would have here domestically would come out to the light and go get jobs at Walmart?
Why would the cartel, how would the cartel be able to find companionship and work within our borders if they couldn't rely on the existence of tens of millions of illegal immigrants who have essentially no choice but to do their bidding because they can't go to the police and they know if they ever ratted on the cartel, there would be no legal recourse?
Why? How would that change with an open border? They still have families in Mexico. There still could be a gun to their head.
We're talking about enfranchising and giving amnesty to the illegal immigrants in this country.
Okay, so you give them amnesty. I still don't see how you've made a case how with amnesty that's going to stop cartel world from putting a gun to a family member's head in Mexico except to make it easier for them to travel between borders, man.
Because now they can come to America, and if they have a legal recourse that they would like to take advantage of, they can go to the police without threat of deportation. You do realize the cartel's #1 effective weapon in keeping cells of compliant immigrants within our country is the fact that they can't go to the police, right? That is the easiest way to make sure that you have people willing to do your bidding, because you know they can't roll on you because they'll get deported if they go to the police.
So,
if
they're going to suddenly start going to the police when there's a gun at their family member's head in Mexico. How is that going to be helpful to them exactly, Vaush?
It's the beginning of a longer process where over time the cartel has less influence in this country. See, human trafficking is happening all over the world. It's not like a binary issue that we can switch on and off by opening or closing the border. That's like a child's way of looking at this. What we can do is create systems of legality within our country that reduce the extent to which human trafficking takes place. And one of the best ways we can do it is by making sure everybody in this country can go to the police if they need to.
That's nice. That's nice for 20 years, 30 years down the road. But we're talking about right now. And right now, the best way to catch human traffickers is going to be with Border Patrol agents, catching them in the act of human trafficking. Vaush.
Do you have evidence of that?
What? That's the best way?
Yeah. Is there any study on the efficacy of that system for catching human traffickers? Because as I understood it,
I'm most certainly sure that there are tons of studies on the human trafficking problem on the southern border. Absolutely.
So you don't. So I have read some of these studies, and it seems like human trafficking doesn't usually happen. Wait, the burden of proof is on you. You brought this argument up, but I can explain what I remember.
You just said you had studies.
As in I've read them. Sorry, but I can synthesize that information for you. As I understand it, human trafficking isn't really like Mexicans bringing little girls over the border. It's usually illegal communities within America that have people sold off or kidnapped by other illegal communities within America. And when they do that, they're usually operating within a business with high enough margins that they can afford legal ways of travel. So it's not like, for example, if they're trying to move from one part of America to another, or out of the American state, they're trying to catch a boat or anything like that. They usually have systems the kid is with you and you're like, hey, shut up if you want to survive this travel. The whole process is really complicated and multi-layered. The best way to address it is to make sure that everybody can go to the police. I think that's the easiest stage. It's the reason why a lot of crime happens amongst sex workers, like prostitutes, because they know even if they get robbed, beaten, raped, if a friend gets murdered, if they go to the police, they're in hot shit too. And the DA will probably push charges on them for being a sex worker. You put everything above the law, you put everything nice and legal, everyone can go to the police. That's a huge step forward.
So you want to combat human trafficking
by giving
from cartel land, who is holding these people's families hostages. Okay, they're literally holding them hostage by telling the people, well, if you come to America and you're legalized, you can go to police. How is that going to help their family members? Exactly.
Wait, hold on. First of all,
I don't understand the argument at all.
The best way human trafficking is the cartel just holding a gun to a family's head for years?
All the time. Are you kidding? That's one of the primary methods that they use to get people to do their dirty work is to threaten their families in Mexico. This is common knowledge.
Why would they get sex trafficked victims from Mexico and subject themselves to the risk of traveling across the southern border when there are tens of millions of undocumented immigrants in America who you could seize with equal to less difficulty because they're separated from their families, and they couldn't go to the police in America, whereas in Mexico, at least in some parts, they could.
What do you mean? What are you talking about?
Okay, I'll say, so why would the cartel and the human trafficking that goes on in this country be about, let's take a little girl from Mexico and then sneak them across the border north and then question mark, rather than just taking kids from the available pool of illegal immigrants in America? There are undocumented kids in America that the cartel knows the existence of, in all likelihood, because they keep tracks on people who they help move up through the border because of coyotes. So wouldn't it be easier for them to just take people from America? Like, why are they bringing people up from
Sure,
Mexico?
I'm sure that it would, but that doesn't make a case for why we need more illegal immigration.
Well, well, I know, again, the laugh does not make you seem any more confident in your argument. So the reason why families turn to cartels to get into America is because you can't legally get into America. If America just let anyone in legally, families in Mexico would no longer have to go, oh my God, we need a better life for our families. We have to rely on the cartel. They would just come up here. Fewer people would come to America under the influence of the cartel. And because of amnesty, the people in America who are already under that influence, all of a sudden, they can talk to the police.
The cartel makes all of its money on the illegality of a thing.
The cartel, yeah. So we need to make it legal. Don't you think that legalizing
Okay, so
drugs?
but if you make illegal immigration legal, the child sex trafficking is still going to be illegal. Okay, so now you just opened up the border to allow more of it.
The reason why they can get away with that is because there are communities in America that can't go to the police. If they can go to the police, that is wait, then why is there a higher rate of crime in and against sex workers? Like much higher. Why does that happen then?
Because they're in sex work,
and
that's really it. Your chances of being assaulted as a sex worker are higher because you're selling sex, man.
And
so you're going to make yourself more available to a predator. Clearly,
wait. Contractors come to my house. I've had like lady electricians come to my place. Why sex workers? Why do they get hurt?
Because they're selling sex.
Okay, so again, what about them being sex workers leads to them receiving more violence?
To say it's because it's illegal, but that's not it. No,
because they can't go to the police. They don't have a system. So if they call the police after being assaulted,
I bet you anything that even in places where prostitution is totally legalized, like in Nevada, you still are going to see higher rates of sex workers being assaulted just because they're sex workers,
but
man.
Lower than in areas where it's illegal, significantly lower. It turns out that once you have the ability to call the cops if you've been assaulted, the likelihood of you being assaulted goes way down.
Nobody's holding their families at gunpoint, Vaush.
So the reason why Johns, usually in places where prostitution is illegal, the reason why they're okay with assaulting sex workers is because they know the sex worker can't go to the police. Their only threat is from a pimp, but their pimp is more concerned with the money than they are the health of the sex worker, meaning that as long as the guy pays out or smooth talks his way past whatever bouncer gets sent to his house next, they're not going to be arrested.
So let me get this right. Let me just make sure I got this straight. You're
learning a lot today.
You're telling me that if south of the border, somebody's holding your family at gunpoint, literally holding your family at gunpoint, that an open border policy, because the people here now have a pathway to citizenship if they're here for 5 years, okay, under this new amnesty plan, let's say, that somehow that's going to mitigate the human trafficking because now they can go to the American police who are going to do what?
If I feel like I'm running about human trafficking, I think the police have procedures for that. But I'm running out of ways to explain this, but I'll go at it one more time. Okay, so let's say America doesn't have illegal immigration. They only accept legal immigrants. But I mean, if you go to the border, there is a process you can get in, period. Okay, as long as you make it to the border, you're fine. So in that situation, how does the cartel get sex trafficking victims across the border? How do they do this? What's the procedure? Why would a family have a gun?
They find holes in the border, which is vastly long, and bring them across by any number of different means. So and the cartel has the added an additional benefit of having a corrupt government on their side that's bribed. They can put pressure on the families of migrants, whether they're legal or illegal, to do this type of trafficking.
So you're saying the cartel kidnaps somebody?
Is to have strong border security.
So I'm trying again. So you're saying the cartel kidnaps a person and then takes them up to our southern border?
No.
Wait, why would the person go along with this? Sometimes they
do, but not necessarily every time.
So in a world where anyone can legally immigrate to America, if you make it to a border, why would anyone accept the cartel's help?
You don't need to accept the cartel's help. The cartel can just tell you what you need to do.
So kidnapping.
If you don't do it, shoot your family members in the head,
okay,
whether or not you've accepted their help or not, Vaush.
Okay, so kidnapping. That's why I said earlier kidnapping. I don't know why you moved off that point.
Well,
You're
they're
saying
not
that
necessarily kidnapping the families. They're just putting pressure on people who are here that they will hurt their families.
Okay, so just so you know, in case you're in a legal bind in the future, holding a gun to a person's family and saying, I'll shoot them if you don't come along with me is kidnapping. So just in case there's ever a legal snafu,
okay,
that's
fine,
what that is.
Vaush, I'll concede that sometimes they're kidnapped and sometimes it's just done via pressure.
So we have, so
it
the
seems
cartel,
to be a meritless distinction, though.
the cartel, I think it's a fairly meritorious distinction. So a cartel now has a non-compliant victim who's being kept only for threat of their family's death. They're smuggled across the border, which is not an easy process under any circumstances. And then they arrive in America to find that now that there are no longer pockets of illegal immigrants here in America, the range of places they could conceivably store or transport a victim has reduced significantly. You see?
I understand what you're saying, but it makes no sense again because it doesn't take away from the pressure. It doesn't take away from the pressure on the families of the origin nation, which there's very little. There's very little we can do about that. Very little.
Well, yes, we can. We can end the drug war, which would bankrupt the cartels. That's the easy way. But with regards to that's not just my.
That's why they're moving into human trafficking, man. Wait, they just find new ways to make money.
Wait, no, hold on. The drug trafficking produces far more money than human trafficking does for the cartels, and
which is why they're moving towards the human trafficking part.
Okay, wait. I feel like your understanding of this issue is like you watched a couple of movies, like you watched Taken, and you're running off of that. So the last thing I'm going to say here, because I feel like we've
common knowledge. This isn't from the movie Taken. Why are
common knowledge is in
it? Wait,
does common knowledge
a serious issue here, man?
Does common knowledge mean everyone else saw that movie too? I expect you to know this.
No, common knowledge means that many border whistleblowers have spoken at length about cartel pressures in the homeland of Mexican immigrants and how they put massive pressure on them. And that is the way that
we're not disagreeing with that.
The smuggling that they want to do.
We're trying to find systemic ways to make it harder to engage in human trafficking. And one of the ways you can do that is by A, making it so that Mexicans no longer feel they need to rely on the cartel to travel to the border, which we could do by enfranchising immigrants. B, reducing the communities of criminality in America by giving amnesty to illegal immigrants within this country, which would, again, make it way harder to illegally traffic anybody because now all these people can go to the police and have jobs. And C, it also means that one of the most common threats you'll hear used against trafficking victims goes away. You know what those traffickers tell their victims? If you go to the police, they're going to deport you and your family. That's a very common one. So you take away that one because the cartel, powerful as it is not omniscient. The cartel doesn't gun down dozens of illegal families in America every single day. They largely rely on
they gun their families down in Mexico every single day.
Again, we're not talking about eliminating it 100%. We're talking about taking steps to reduce it. So with amnesty,
strong
and with
border policy would be a good step for reducing it.
I'm almost done. And with the ability for victims and their families to go to the police, we make human trafficking harder on every single level. And that's going to work way the hell better than this long-standing and doomed effort that you're trying to propose to police a 2,500-mile contiguous border so well that the cartel, with all their billions in knowledge, could not find a way around, which is ridiculous.
They're not omniscient. You just said they're not omniscient.
They're not omniscient. They're just not stupid. Patrolling a 2,500-mile border is incredibly difficult, no matter how many hundreds of billions you put towards it. So, no.
So is legalizing millions of immigrants on the tax-paid dollar. We
would make money from doing that, and that would actually be super easy. You just have to pass a law. So anyway,
ridiculous.
So if you want to deal with human trafficking, you can either adopt a failed approach that will also lead to a damaged economy, or you can adopt a humane approach that functions better and boosts our economy.
Okay, I know which one I think we both got what we needed to say out of the way on that. So the one last thing that I'd like to move on before the debate is over, if that's okay with you, is I'd like you to set a number. What's the number you'd like to see on immigrants coming in before we end up with an overwhelmed job system in the United States? Do you think it's just a never-ending amount, or how many do you think?
China has like 1.4 billion people in it, right?
Yeah, but we're not China, and they operate heavily on peasant wages and peasant labor. So not looking to have everybody in the United States make low wages because there's a billion of them.
But the evidence shows that immigration increases wages. So actually, if we keep letting people
no, it
immigrate
doesn't show it increases wages. It shows that it'll increase GDP.
You want to see my data?
It'll make the pie bigger.
No,
that
wages.
Doesn't mean the slices of the pie get bigger.
No, I said
and in China,
wages.
they're certainly not bigger slices.
It increases wages because when immigrants come in, they tend not to be as skilled and they tend not to speak English as often, which means that they form jobs, which means new businesses need to be formed, and managerial roles usually go to native inhabitants of the country. So yes, the wages of native workers rise, the GDP rises, and wages rise. Everyone benefits. So if we
wages don't correlate with.
Andrew, let him finish what he's going to say.
I'm sorry,
we can go over the data if you'd like later. They do, but yeah, we're talking about, let's say, 1 billion immigrants. America's a big, wide country. I'm sure we can find room for all of them. It'll be a nice powerhouse economically, a lot of culture in here.
So is Mexico. Mexico's a nice big country. You're talking about 40 million people in California, 128 million in Mexico.
Yeah,
okay. And Mexico's 5 times the size of California.
Is Mexico,
so why don't you want immigrants to go into Mexico to boost their economy?
Wait, because I live in America. I want my economy boosted. I'm very selfish. I want my economy to be big.
Right. Gotcha.
The real answer, by the way, because that was an incredibly stupid question, is that I believe that people should have the right to travel where they want. If workers want to come live in America, if they want to come work in America because they like the benefits that we provide, I think that's a right. It seems to me very strange that we get one life on this planet and then the area of space you can actually physically inhabit is limited to borders drawn by people who died ages ago. It's very dumb.
Open borders.
Of course, I'm a communist. Yeah,
gotcha. Open borders. So
you do, by the way, need open borders.
How many? You want 1.5 billion immigrants?
Well, it would depend on how much our country could hold without their starting.
That's what I'm asking you. I'm asking you what we should put the cap on since you've studied all the data.
Wait, hold on. So I've studied the data on the effects of immigration. I don't know what the population cap for the contiguous United States is.
So don't you think it's better than if we go ahead and look at the specific labor industry markets that we need immigrants in?
No, because we're hundreds
and bring
of
them in based on that versus having a crazy open border policy like you just advocated for, and having mass migration across the border.
You keep using very scary words, but nobody here is scared but you. I don't know exactly how many people, hypothetically, theoretically, down the line.
I'm terrified for the wages of the American worker. I'm sorry that upsets you.
If you read the data, you wouldn't be. So I think that America,
Andrew, I'm going to mute you.
Within its borders, it can probably hold hundreds of millions more. I'd guess, based on the population of China and their relative level of population density, that in its totality, America could probably stabilize at around 500 million people. China probably has a little bit too much population density. More of it's going to spread across Southeast Asia, Africa with time. But yeah, I mean, we're nowhere near that line. I mean, we are a long way away from that line. So
what's the line?
Then, I don't know. Wait. How can I know? Maybe technology will change and the total number of immigrants, at least 500 million. We're a long way away from it. I don't know what the exact line is. Do you want me to make one up?
So the reason I ask is because
800 million?
We're looking at economic models for caps here. It makes complete and total sense to everybody who's logical that you should only bring in the amount of immigration that's necessary for the service sectors that you need.
Just a few hundred more million.
Okay, a few hundred more million.
Yeah.
Okay, so what? 500 million? That's where
this is an odd obsession with finding a. Have you heard of what is it called? The continuum fallacy? I don't know where the head ends and the neck begins. All I know is that right now our country can do for quite a bit more.
So your argument boils down to
in the future, solar flares destroy our atmosphere and we dig into the ground. And every country can inhabit 1 billion more people.
So your argument boils down to you want the whole world to immigrate to the U.S. and you basically
we can immigrate to there.
You want to make everything legal. You want to make drugs legal. You want to make everything legal for everybody.
Are you scared? Because you don't seem to have an argument against these ideas.
I'm not thrilled by the communist prospect of doing that. No.
Well, wait. Drug legalization is a broad libertarian concept, not just a communist one. That's for one. And for two, if the whole country is developed
on it, which is why we have a fentanyl epidemic right now. And even if you made it legal, it would not change the fentanyl epidemic in the United States.
Actually, I can correct you on that. In Portugal, drugs have been completely decriminalized, and it has led to a reduction in addiction because it's treated now. So, okay, that was a non-response. So the reason why that is because in that country now, addiction and drug use, they're considered to be health problems rather than criminal problems. So now when you have an addict, they're taken to a hospital rather than a prison. This means there is a much, much, much lower rate of reuse, and that the government actually works to address this problem rather than exacerbating it. It has cost them less money. It has led to fewer addicts. There is no reason on God's green earth we should not try this here in the States.
So back to the immigration one more time. I'm going to ask you this.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. It's off topic. Okay. Neither one of us really should have gone off it, but we can address that at a future debate. But one more time on the immigration thing. I still haven't really heard you address why we should have millions more immigrants come into the nation as an overage of what we actually need for sector-specific jobs.
I don't know what you mean by need for sector-specific jobs.
Okay, so we have high-skilled labor shortages and low-skilled labor shortages. So you need a mixture of low-skilled and high-skilled labor. So if you advocate that large amounts of low-skilled labor come in, you're going to displace the low-skilled work population in the United States.
We've already been over this.
We've seen this, by the way, with every single immigration wave in the United States. Every single one.
It doesn't decrease wages.
Local, low-skilled wages have been displaced by mass migration.
We haven't seen that. We've seen
yes, we have seen it.
There have been studies done when Cubans came to Florida. We've seen this near the border. We've seen this in El Paso. The data does not suggest that you're.
Yes, it does. Going all the way back to the Irish, in fact, it does. One of the main primary reasons
the Irish
that
came
people
when we
were
barely
so upset with the
industrialized.
Irish is because of the wage depression that was going on. We've seen this with multiple migration waves.
Wait, hold on. People getting mad at the Irish, first of all, that doesn't mean anything economically. For example, people like you are mad at Mexicans, but you have no reason to, since all they do is help our economy. People being angry at a group for the imagined crime of displacing wages and jobs is not the same as them actually doing it. There is plenty of data on this, and it just doesn't support your position. You keep saying we should increase
the data that does. I provided a brief to Congress that showed that there's an economic displacement among the Black community that's overwhelming, and you yourself have conceded that people without high school diplomas are the most economically affected. Who would that be, Vaush?
By 1.1%.
Not by 1.1%.
Wait, hold on. Wait, hold on. By 1.1% of their wage, and everyone else in society gets a larger benefit that then goes towards taxes, which then goes towards social programs.
No, some of these studies are saying it's as high as 3.8 to 5.
You keep saying some of these studies. I've gone over this data, and the 1404 link you provided me was not particularly convincing.
Has been from old data from 2008. You don't seem to have comprehensive modern data on this at all.
Okay. So I can see we're running in circles on this. So the last thing I'll say is this. You keep trying to defer to some sort of common sense immigration policy, which in reality means I have no data to support my argument. Hold on. I have no data to support my argument, so I'm deferring to intuition. But even then, since immigration generally across the board benefits our economy, there's no reason to limit it to specific subsectors. We haven't even talked about the social arguments here, because I think that socially speaking, immigration enriches our country significantly. But I mean, just economically, like this is just a slam dunk. We should all be in favor of immigration.
It's not a slam dunk. You haven't made a case for it being a slam dunk. I've provided multiple studies. We've talked about the human trafficking. You've had no refutation here except to say, well, it's going to grow the GDP. Even though the slice is going to get smaller for everybody, that's still a good thing. And then you source China as having 1 billion people, and we all know that they operate on peasant wages. It's an insane argument.
I want to say one more thing. So this is the reason why I knew this argument would be kind of a waste of time. I don't actually know if you're intelligent enough to understand the arguments that I'm making. So first of all, I cited wages, not GDP. I don't think I've actually said GDP once over the entirety of this argument. Second of all, you cite China's population as being an evidence of a poor argument.
No, you did. You cited it.
You just hold on, because you're suggesting that the fact that their country is poor means that their population density is in some way related. You realize areas with a higher population density, generally speaking, have a higher GDP per capita, right? This is an inverse correlation.
But you realize that economic disparity is going to come with higher immigration influx, right?
So maybe to you, at the end of the day, the problem is I say a thing and then your response indicates you didn't understand what I said, which is why I feel like we've kind of gone in circles.
I understand what you're saying. You're just wrong. You're just not correct.
All right, so we're gonna start to close this down and get to some of the Q&A.
Sure.
So I don't know if you guys want to
I'd
do.
love to do this on the cultural impacts too. We just didn't have time. I would like to thank Vaush for coming on and having a good faith debate with me, though. I do appreciate that.
All right, so I
I'll
think
get
we'll
you
do.
immigration pilled one of these days, okay?
I think we'll do the closings after we get to these questions. So, from Jazar to Andrew, you referenced mass immigration a few times. What would you consider normal amount of immigration?
What I would consider a normal amount of immigration, and what makes the most amount of sense, is to look at the sectored economy and take a look at the job openings or the current job shortfalls that you have. And then you can determine whether you want high skill workers or low skill workers to come in to take up those shortfalls. That would be what I would consider a normal amount of immigration. And it would be a much wiser policy than this open border advocacy nonsense.
Okay, from Caleb, does Andrew think
Did
that
you want to
legal?
let Vaush respond to that question?
Well, it was directed at you, but if he wants to respond to it, he can. Well,
Mass immigration is a fear-mongering term. In reality, there's no such thing. There's just immigration. We have immigration waves from time to time, but mass immigration is just I mean, they might as well be saying spooky immigration. It's just designed to get the voters riled up. There's no actual term or definition or meaning to the turn of phrase.
okay. So from Caleb, does Andrew think that legalizing drugs won't seriously impact the wealth and reach of the cartels?
It will, but they move on to other methodologies for money, okay? And human trafficking is one of those methodologies. So just simply legalizing drugs it may have blowback that's unintended, that you have no idea exactly what it's going to do. So do I think that it'll impact their wealth? Sure. Do I think that they'll find other ways to make revenue? I do. And they might be way worse than what we're seeing with the drug crisis right now.
Okay, so from William Anam, for Vaush, apart from amnesty to illegal immigrants already in the country, what other reforms would you like to see to the U.S. immigration policy?
Amnesty is obviously a huge one. As for immediate matters of concern, I think that we need border facilities built to handle influx of asylum processors, immigrants, and unaccompanied children. These facilities should be well regulated, close to major population centers. These facilities should be like, you stay here for a couple of days while the government figures out the situation. Right now, our system for that process is pretty screwed. And it's very unethical. Like Biden recently denying lawyers the ability to go inside some of those border facilities. Disgusting. We got that. Another major one, I feel like there should be some sort of government office designed to provide opportunity to freshly arrived immigrants. As it stands right now, most undocumented immigrants and immigrants from Mexico in general, they move up from the southern border and they just situate in like the lower third of America. Not that that's a problem for the lower third of America, but I say, hey, spread the benefit, you know? Maybe find a way to incentivize the sort of distribution of labor and economic resources across the country. Might lead to a little bit more of an equitable situation. Everyone feels like they've got their hand in the pocket, you know?
It's not true. They migrate all over the United States. Oftentimes, they're bused from place to place in order to bolster voting blocks, in fact.
Oh, wait, no, wait, you can't just drop that. You think illegal immigrants are bused to vote?
Yeah, I do.
And why has there been no evidence of it after?
The entire amnesty process is designed around that very principle to bolster voting blocks.
If they're illegal immigrants, they can't vote. There has never been evidence found of voter fraud occurring systemically in the U.S.
You would have a great point if you weren't advocating for amnesty, wouldn't you?
Wait, then it's not. Wait, amnesty doesn't mean citizenship. It just means
if you're busing them strategically into locations so that you can provide amnesty for them at a later date, guess what that does?
Amnesty doesn't mean they can vote.
Yes, it will. They're talking about voting rights for them, and there's already legislation that's proposed constantly to allow illegal immigrants to vote.
No, so in Chicago, there was talk that illegal immigrants could vote for like a mayor. There was no discourse that a federal election will allow non-citizens to vote. Nobody is talking about this. So not only are they illegal,
they are talking about it. That's a lie.
No, they're not. Who's that? Find me an article. Find me an article of some major institution or politician saying that illegal immigrants or non-citizens should be able to vote in federal elections. I want one.
I'll give you. I can link you many.
I want one. You win with one.
Has discussed this ad nauseum. What are you talking about? This is well known.
Can I? Okay, so none. We have none. Then we're just going to.
I can't link anything, and I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do about that, man. But I can send it to you.
Yeah, please. I would love to see evidence that people are discussing non-citizens voting in federal elections. There have been study after study after study on this. There has never been evidence found that we have a major voter fraud issue in federal elections. Not only are illegal immigrants illegal, but if you gave them amnesty, they're still immigrants, not citizens. And then even if you make them citizens, it's illegal to move outside of
citizenship with the amnesty. What are you talking about, man?
Wait. No, it would just make them legal immigrants. Amnesty doesn't mean citizenship.
Look at their plan. They want full citizenship rights within 5 years. This is what's being proposed.
Then even if they're made citizens, it's illegal to travel from district to district to one that you don't live in to vote there. That also doesn't happen.
But if you strategically bust them all over the United States now in order to provide
what's the address that they voted in? Wait, this is so hold on.
Blocks, can't you?
No, there's no evidence of this happening after the 2016 election when Trump lied and said 3 million illegals voted because he expected to lose to Hillary and wanted to repeat the lie after he won anyway. There was an investigation done. There's no evidence of this. A federal investigation was done on this. It doesn't happen. It happens time after time. We can get into
this, and I'm happy to. But let's finish.
I want evidence of somebody saying non-citizens should be able to vote in a federal election. That would be spectacular.
Okay, should we continue?
No chance.
Should we continue with the Q&A?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so from Eric Pone, Vaush, how do we avoid inflationary pressures with an open border?
I don't necessarily think that's a huge deal. I don't know what extent does immigration effect on inflation. I haven't seen anything saying that. Hold on. Some people say immigration causes inflation as the demand for goods and services driving up the price. As a result, whether it brings or falls, we bring a lot of. Okay, so they're saying that an influx just in like low income, low skill workers might increase inflation. That could conceivably be an issue.
No kidding.
So the good thing is that right now we're at historically low inflation levels. I mean, seriously, we're at like what 1.7. The Fed has been, working its ass off keeping those inflation levels low. So I'd say even if that does end up being like a broader cause, it could probably do for a couple points up if we felt that the immigration was worth more to us economically, which it seems to be as far as we can tell. If we end up having larger issues with this down the line, then obviously we should adjust our policy to compensate.
Which Eric Pone, by the way, what he just said is going to hurt your pocketbook real bad.
Okay,
it won't. Again, wages increase.
It will, and you just said it's going to increase inflation. That was your own words, the very study that you pulled up.
The wages still increase, though, by more than the immigration would lead to an increase in inflation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so from Post Manifesto to Vaush, can you better explain how ending the drug war would help? I'm guessing meant with illegal immigration. I don't think you elaborated fully.
Not illegal immigration, but the cartels. Cartels make their money because they grow or peddle drugs up through our southern border or via boat or plane if they can, and then they sell it here for exorbitant prices. If drugs are made legal in America, that means that the same thing happened to weed, by the way, in California, where all of a sudden you're no longer getting your weed from like the local dealer who gets theirs from a local, dispensary, which may or may not be cartel affiliated. Nowadays, you just get everything from a dispensary, which is more corporate and arguably more expensive. But on the plus side, that income is now taxed and the cartel doesn't make money off of it. You do this with heroin, cocaine, so on and so forth, and the cartel runs out of its major source of income.
Okay, so from based homeschool mom to Vaush, wouldn't mass immigration from the whole world just increase the wealth of the corrupt elite and cause more exploitation of the lower classes?
In a capitalist economy, which is what we tragically live under, literally everything that is good for the economy of our country will be especially good for the wealthy elite. That's not just immigration, that's everything. All good fiscal policy will disproportionately affect the elite. Now, immigration benefits almost everyone. Again, there's only a very small subset of workers that have their wages decreased, even then by a marginal amount, but you can then use the additional tax revenue to distribute that wealth. If you have a problem with inequality, that is not an immigration problem, that is a domestic drastic tax problem. If you have an issue with the wealthy holding all the control in society, pulling all the strings, that's not something you're going to fix with immigration policy. That's only something that you can fix by properly taxing and redistributing wealth. People who make this an immigration issue are being selective about it because they have some other issue with immigration. It's not the inequality of fiscal distribution, because that happens with all economic policy. It's something specific about immigration they don't like. You can say whatever it is, but it's true.
Okay, so from Western Artifact, Vaush, if wealth can be created by immigrants, why reject great man theory of trickle-down economics? If immigrants create wealth that helps the country, why don't the wealthy?
I'm not entirely sure what you mean. Wealthy people can also produce economic value, but that doesn't mean they don't take more. Wait, hold on. Okay, wait, hold on. I need to respond to this a little more comprehensively. First of all, great man theory has nothing to do with this. Great man theory is just a socio-political lens of analysis, which lends significant credence to the individual genius of people. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Trickle-down economics has been proven false. It does not work. When I'm talking about immigration boosting our economy, I'm talking about the opposite, trickle-up economics. The mass growth of our labor market leads to more money being generated and a higher velocity of wealth, which leads to the country being enriched. I'm talking about the opposite of trickle-down economics. It turns out when you give $5 to an illegal immigrant, that shit makes its way around the block a dozen times, makes everyone richer. You give it to a bank or a wealthy person, and it sits in the Cayman Islands for the rest of that person's life. Never contributes to the economy, no velocity to that money. Wealthy people don't spend the money they're given. They save it. Poor people spend it. If you want to make a country rich, you make the poor rich.
Okay, so from Crazy Monk 27 to Andrew, why argue for less immigration and not higher wages overall, which has not moved alongside inflation for the past 6 decades?
Well, the two are intertwined. You end up with, when you're talking about mass migration, especially, what you end up with is workforce displacement, which lowers wages. This is why I was bringing up all the studies that have to do with Black Americans having their wages consistently lowered by having this mass migration. So you will find that I do want wages to be higher. The best way that wages can be higher is if you have corporations competing over workers, instead of having tons and tons of workers oversaturate the marketplace, which then corporations aren't competing, then workers are competing for the corporation.
Okay,
That's what they want you to believe, of course. In reality,
Because
wage
it's
hikes
true.
in America are determined by unionization. Every time, though, they try to break up the unions. They say, hey, if you really want higher wages, keep those brown people out of work.
Oh, yeah. Way to contradict yourself. Wow.
What?
Anyways.
That unions boost wages? Is that a contradiction?
Okay, so we'll take a couple more questions and then we can close this down. From Charlie MGMC to Andrew, do you think Ian Alden's number rate of immigration is preferable, desirable? Who's Ian Alden?
What's the Eden Alden number rate exactly?
Oh, no. Okay.
I know that one. It's pretty high.
Well, you pulled it up.
I'll bring it up later in the next convo.
All right. So for Andrew, how does Andrew respond? Another one with this. Did you guys talk about Alden? I just completely blacked out for it. Okay. Dilemma when we discuss immigration. I don't know, I'm going to go to the next one. Okay. So Vaush, I was just over on your site. You literally have comments going faster. Okay, that's not a question. Okay, I think we are pretty much all caught up. So I guess we can shut this down. Thank you guys both for coming on. If you guys want to do any closing statements before we shut it down.
Nope, I just like to again thank Vaush for coming in good faith and having a spirited debate.
Yeah, likewise. I always appreciate the conversations. Also, just I don't know. It feels like this is the game we play like we've been doing it for hundreds of years. You know, you tell poor people, "Hey, why are you poor?" And then the pig winks and he says, "Ha, well, it's because of the recently freed slaves. It's because of the Irish. It's because of the Italians. It's because of the so on and so on and so on." And then, I mean, we fight this game over and over. But the only thing that's ever really led to substantive proportional wage increases in this country, fair tax policies and unionization. That does it. Every time, that does it.
Mass migration is not going to help with unionization.
Actually, unions are more likely to form in diverse neighborhoods. It turns out that like all white neighborhoods or neighborhoods exclusively occupied by native residents are generally easier to buy into the type of propaganda that you peddle, and they think that like they just need to work hard and like yeah, and they're like away from the immigrants and how they can work. But actually, in inner city areas, unionization is more discussed or discussed more frequently. So,
well, yeah, because cronyism like to siphon off money from the union workers, not because the unions are actually good for the workers. They're just
the math shows unions are
exploited.
good for the workers. I noticed how you just jumped points there, by the way. You were like, ha, well, maybe you'd have more unions if it weren't for immigrants. And then I proved that wrong. And then you were like, ha,
You didn't prove anything.
Don't
You
work
just made
anyway.
a declarative statement. That's not proof.
I mean, I can next time we talk, I'll bring more data. But yeah, it seems like diverse neighborhoods want unions more.
Okay.
Have a good one, guys.
Yeah, so if you guys are watching, we do have another debate in about 40 minutes. It's going to be on whether or not the DNC stole the election from Bernie Sanders. So if you guys want to check that out, it's up on the upcoming streams, and we will be doing that. Thank you again both for coming on. Really appreciate it. And I think we can close it down.
Yeah, take care. Sorry about the confusion the other day.
Yeah, I know why they say bad Vaush now.
You all take care now.
Good night.
Peace.
I bet those glasses make you see better.